there is nothing heavier than an unmade decision. I don't remember who said that, but I feel that it's very, very accurate. And it's because when a decision is unmade, it's like an ink blot that is dropped into a piece of paper or water, and all of the future possibilities that are attached to that decision are just splaying out into an uncertain future. But when a decision is made, all that gets collapsed down into a line. It's like drawing a line between now and then. And so many things are just decided for us. Like, recently been trying to figure out whether or not to move out of my apartment that I'm currently renting. And in that indecisive state, there's like second and third order consequences to consider that are fractal in nature. Well, they're not fractal actually. It's like two different trees branching off. Like it's a binary decision, right? So it's a little bit simpler. But if I stay, then there's this to sort out. Okay. If I leave, then there's this to sort out. And there's a kind of deadline by which to make that decision. So you've got one decision tree, another decision tree, and then a time pressure that's associated with it. So there's a huge amount of stress. But if the decision is made, and the decision has been made in my case, then all of the ancillary second and third order decisions, they get collapsed down and they just get made automatically. It's almost like, folding a book shut. You just kind of look at it, it just becomes much thinner and much clearer. And the resistance towards making decisions, I think, comes from, yeah, like an excess of agency. A lot of times in our history, the decisions that we make about how to spend our time would not have been available to us because they would have been dictated, for example, by the seasons or by the people we knew or by the age we were or the time of day. Before we had electricity, we'd have to work in certain times and sleep in certain times. But we've now got more agency than ever, and yet life becomes harder in a way because there's more to consider because we're not tethered to our physical limitations in the same way. And when a decision is made, it also releases a kind of latent energy. And an energy is bound up in decision making. If I, for example, know that I'm going to move out of my apartment, and all of the energy that was absorbed in considering that conundrum is unavailable for everything else. And it's why you'll see that people who exist in a state of indecision are very, very tired and overwhelmed by that because all of their creative energy is consumed in this like fractal living where they're unsure what the future holds. And it's a very painful place to live and the place that I know very well. And the reason why I would choose to live there and why people would choose to live there is because of a fear that making the wrong decision is going to place us in a state where we cannot cope. As I often say about a lot of things, the anxiety is I've got to make the right decision here. If I make the wrong decision, then I'm not going to be able to manage and life is just going to be a disaster. And one of the benefits of having been around the block or having lived a reasonable amount of time is just looking back in one's history and seeing that that actually wasn't the case. Whatever challenges I've experienced in my life until this point, I have been able to overcome, sometimes even thrive, often thrive. And none of those decisions have been terminal. I could probably look back and see a lot of cases where I would have chosen differently. But of course, I don't know now. I don't know if choosing differently in that circumstance would have made life better or would have made life worse. So there's a kind of futility even in entertaining that, and I think that that is another kind of rumination that people do, which I do, which I look back in the past and think, oh, well, if I'd done this with this person, then my life would be this way now. And it's a sort of almost like an attempt to revise history. And I think, there's a chemical state in the body, I suspect, a sort of serotonin deficiency, dopamine deficiency, that encourages people to live that way because they're falling into a state of prolonged contraction. As I say in my other videos, contraction is necessary. But in the state of prolonged contraction, we're trying to learn from mistakes. We're trying to anticipate the future in a way to avoid damage. In an expanded state, we're trying to maximize an opportunity. And there's sort of like two different modes, like attack and defense, that we occupy psychologically. And a person who feels very safe will expand more. A person who feels threatened will contract more. But everyone essentially has to have these two sides of the coin in order to propel them forwards, to provide propulsion. And so one exercise that I like to do when I'm journaling is to write down as a prompt, what decisions am I avoiding right now? And just to see what they are. And there'll probably be a whole bunch of them, from very small things like, should I pay this bill now or later? Or should I try and rescue a relationship with this person or not? And just to make all these things explicit on paper is to externalize them and just to see that they're all just kind of rattling around in one's head. Like, I think about certain things so much. Like, I'll just be thinking in bed, like, every day about a certain relationship with a certain friend, or a certain kind of decision that I'm trying to make, or what am I going to do for this job, or what am I going to say to this person. I could be thinking about that one decision for months or years, but then when that decision is made, it sort of like disappears off the map of consciousness, and it no longer takes up any space. And it's such a beautiful, clean thing that, yeah, as I say, all of that creative energy can then be directed towards something else. And as I say, it's often a lot more energy than we believe, because when a decision isn't made, it's not only the indecision that creates the bind and the energy. It's also all of the other possibilities that could be derived from that decision being made one way or the other. So let's make more decisions. Let's make them faster, and just remember that it's very unlikely that a catastrophe will arise from making the wrong decision. I mean, there's obviously cases where it is good to consider things very, very carefully, to seek advice from stakeholders. But in the matters of the heart, in the matters of minor things, and sometimes things that feel major are actually a lot more minor than they seem. And so in those cases, it's often totally fine to just make a decision one way or another. Life will continue. Life will be fine, and you will be okay. So let me know what you think of this message today. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, see you in the next video. Please check out my other content. I think it helps if people watch other videos after this one. So if you want to support the channel, that's a great way to do it. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.